So, when a phone gets launched with Samsung's fancy new HP1 200 megapixel camera sensor, you'd probably expect some pretty high quality banger photos, right? Yeah, me too. Now, as far as I'm aware, the 12T Pro is only one of 3 phones in the market right now that pack Samsung's new HP1 camera sensor. The other 2 coming from Motorola. But in addition to the 200 megapixel main shooter, it also comes with an 8 megapixel ultra wide, a 2 megapixel macro, and a 20 megapixel selfie cam. Now, the way the 200 megapixel camera works is by default it's set to 12.5 megapixels using a 16:1 pixel binning process. But you can manually select the 200 megapixel mode by tapping on the Ultra HD option, which annoyingly defaults to 50 megapixels for some reason, so you gotta tap again on the 200 megapixel button at the top of the viewfinder. Now, at this point, you might be wondering what the difference is between the 50 megapixel and 200 megapixel options. There is none, just file size and the ability to crop in a bit more. That's it. So that being said, we'll focus on the 200 megapixel photos instead of the pointless 50. And while looking at them, after taking over 200 photo samples, I'm hoping you'll agree with me when I say in its current state, the photos kinda suck. I mean, sure, it can capture good, fine detail in some photos, and you can crop in quite a bit to better frame your image in post, but most of the time I found the exposure to be all over the place. Shadows are either crushed into oblivion, or they're lifted so much details look like mush. And colors are either underwhelming or overwhelming depending on whether or not the highlights are blowing out the saturation curve. I also noticed there's a fair bit of focus hunting going on, so even if I have an object or a point of interest smack dab in the middle of the viewfinder, it'll either switch focus to the background or the foreground, so I'd have to take multiple shots while tapping to focus to get the image I actually want. And I don't know what kind of glass is used for the camera, but man is it sensitive to lens flare. Like if there's any light shining at the lens, you can blow a kiss goodbye to any color you were hoping to capture. At least since the sensor's so big, we get some nice natural depth of field when taking shots of objects closer up. And like I said, it does capture good, fine details, which is nice when cropping in on your photos. And every now and then, when the stars align, it can produce some nice looking images, but with all the other annoyingly consistent issues, it really needs some tuning and calibration work done. And to add insult to injury, night mode is terrible. Like, it's completely unusable. Dude, I've reviewed other Xiaomi phones half the price of this one, and their night mode photos look like a work of art compared to this phone. 4K video, on the other hand, looks great. It'll do 4K at 30 or 60 FPS. Image stabilization works really well, and oddly enough, exposure is perfectly fine in video mode, which means dynamic range and colors look great too. Now, the 20 megapixel selfie camera does give us some more detail to crop in on, like the 200 megapixel camera, but again, exposure is way off. Now, before we get to the rest, I need to do a quick plug for this video's sponsor, Epidemic Sound. Over the years, I've been asked many times where I get all the music for my videos, and it's been from Epidemic Sound. As a content creator, I know how important it is to have the right music and sound effects for my videos to create that subliminal mood I'm after for each video, and Epidemic Sound has this huge library of over 35,000 tracks and 90,000 sound effects to choose from. Actually, it's where I get that whoosh sound from when I speed ramp the slow-mo clips in some of my videos. And with Epidemic Sound, I never have to worry about copyright strikes or takedowns, which is super important. So I'm allowed to monetize my videos and can count on them staying monetized. But what's sweet is you can try Epidemic Sound for free for 30 days. Just click the link in the description to sign up and you'll get access to the entire music library. And everything you post during your trial is protected, even if you cancel. So if you're a content creator, give Epidemic Sound a try and give your content some mood. The rest of the phone's actually pretty decent though. Gorilla Glass 5 on the front, standard glass on the back with a plastic frame wrapping around and an IR transmitter at the top. It's got a 6.67 inch AMOLED display with a 2712 by 1220 resolution, so not quite 1440p, but a bit higher than 1080p. It's got a peak brightness of 900 nits, so it just barely squeaks into that HDR10 Plus certification, and yeah, it looks great, no complaints from me there. It's also got a 120 Hz refresh rate, which is nice to see, especially for games that support it. And speaking of gaming, We get the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 with either 8 or 12 gigs of RAM, so you'd expect flawless performance, but after about 30 to 45 minutes of gaming, I started to get a few frame drops here and there, but the phone wasn't really that hot, which tells me there's thermal throttling going on. So after running the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme benchmark, I ran the stress test, but before it was finished, I got a test failed due to overheating message, and that sort of confirmed the thermal throttling for me. On a positive note, the stereo speakers sound awesome. They can get loud and have a nice full audio profile thanks to audio tuning from Harman Kardon. It's, just too bad all Xiaomi phones didn't come with these speakers. And finally, touching on the battery, we don't get any wireless charging here, but we do get a 120 watt charging brick in the box. Unfortunately, that 5,000 milliamp hour battery only gave me on average just under 6 hours of screen on time, which is about an hour or two short of what we normally see from other phones with the same battery capacity. So look, maybe Xiaomi sends out a software update in the future, vastly improving the camera and really taking advantage of what the HP1 sensor is capable of, but maybe they don't. I mean, the rest of the phone's pretty nice, especially for the price, but with the camera in its current state and no guarantee it'll get better, well, there's a lot of other phones with similar specs that produce better photos in the same price range, so something to think about. But that's gonna do it for this one. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll talk to you all on the next one. Cheers.